I wanted to share how this is all going to come together, and this is becoming more obvious with each added detail that's being revealed, and just articles from a long time ago and recent ones. But Rabbi Berger, the one who oversees King David's tomb, he had made this comment a couple of years ago, like in 2019. He said, "We need the real king, and all this conflict over how to run the country will end with the emergence of the true king." So you may have been wondering how the whole thing is going to come together. We know that King Charles III spoke at the World Economic Forum and made those comments about that he would have to have trillions at his disposal, whoever he is, and talking about how he's more than likely the king that will be coronated for many reasons. The one that has the Jewish circumcision in his flesh at his birth in 1948, when Israel became a nation, and he happened to be circumcised and born that exact year. I've talked in the last few videos, and I don't want to repeat a whole bunch of that, but I feel that it's important to say, because he has the covenant, the Jews would accept him. He has been speaking at the World Economic Forum, of course, because of he's the big promoter of climate change, like the world leader in it. So you may find this very interesting. King Charles III, he's got two relatives that are buried over on the Mount of Olives. One is his grandmother, Princess Alice. What I've talked about before is how the self-appointed Sanhedrin members in Israel, their hope is to become the world court and to do away with the United Nations and replace that in Jerusalem with a representative of every one of the 70 nations. And basically, we know in Revelation 18 that that's not speaking about America at all, that it's speaking about Jerusalem. And one of the reasons being is it actually says in scripture in there that she deceived the nations. So we know it's talking about Israel, and we're talking about corrupt leaders. I'm not talking about, righteous people in Israel or anything like that. So let's clear that up. But how is this going to come together, and why would they pick King Charles III as the anointed one when he's coronated and anointed with the holy oil? And that's how he could be seen as a Messiah, especially if he starts doing things on a worldwide scale. But you've got to know this, and this is really unbelievable. Klaus Schwab, founder and president of the World Economic Forum, and Rabbi Arthur Schneier, founder and president of Appeal of Conscience, Light Candles, February 3rd, 2002 at Ground Zero during a visit of religious leaders participating at the 32nd annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in New York. Okay, well, this article was from fitzinfo.net by Valentin Kadasonov, written August 25th, 2021, and translated from Russian. Dr. Klaus Martin Schwab, president of the World Economic Forum, has become one of the key figures in world politics since last year. In 2020, he put forth the Great Reset Plan, designed to completely revolutionize the world order, which we know. This plan is outlined in sufficient detail by Schwab in his book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, published in the summer of 2020. Schwab continued this theme in the book of Stakeholder Capitalism, A Global Economy That Works for Progress, People, and Planet. The Global Economy is Working for Progress, People and the Planet, which appeared at the beginning of 2021. Schwab, who turned 83 that March, is, one might say, at the zenith of fame. True scandalous fame. For the plan of the Great Reset presupposes the seizure of power over the world by a small group of the, quote, chosen. Naturally, interest in the biography of Klaus Schwab grew. The internet gives a detailed description of the life of this non-hero, but for some reason only from the moment he graduated from high school and entered in 1957 to study at the Federal Swiss Institute of Technology. What about that? 2 or 3 lines of the following content, born on March 30th, 1938, in the German city of Ravensburg. He also studied at the gymnasium, which he graduated from in 1957. Nothing is said either about his parents or about his ancestors and relatives, or about studying at the gymnasium, or about childhood friends, habits, etc. It seems that someone put the stamp secret on the biography of Klaus. During his life in Ravensburg, naturally, versions of his life appeared. Then they had a picture of Klaus on December 13th. I guess that was back in 2016. Klaus Schwab, executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, walks into Trump Tower on December 17, 2016 in New York City. The then President-elect Donald Trump continued to hold meetings with potential members of his cabinet at his office. Not a good thing. So if you think you're going to be voting for somebody that's meeting with Klaus Schwab, and you think that he's going to clarify and clear up all the problems of America, think again. Because I thought he was a better person than that, but it's not looking good. Some of them are sensational in nature. For example, there's a picture on social networks depicting the ancestry of Klaus Schwab, and this was something that was made up, apparently. It follows from it that his father was Fred Schwab and his mother was Marianne Schwab, which is not true, of course. And it says Nee Rothschild, born in 1919. In turn, Marianne's father was Louis Rothschild, 1864 to 1942, a banker from the German city of Bad Homburg. Later, most of the materials belonged to Klaus Schwab. To the Rothschild clan disappeared as the authors of the sensational news made confusion. Indeed, there were such Fred and Marianne Schwab, and Marianne was indeed from the Rothschild clan. But Klaus Schwab was not among their children. It turns out that Fred and Marianne are the namesakes of our Klaus. Well, he's not my Klaus. Yet find out why Klaus never mentions his parents' names. In the most concentrated form, information about Klaus's father is collected in the material Klaus Schwab and the Fourth Reich, published on March 18th of 2021. Klaus's father's name was Eugene Wilhelm Schwab, born in 1899. When Klaus was born, his father was the director of Escher, Weiss and Company, which was based in Ravensburg. Eugenie Schwab continued to work for the company as honorary president until his death in 1982. Company Escher Weiss was founded in 1805. In the 20th century, she developed unique high-strength materials intended for the production of gas turbines, compressors, electrical equipment, heat pumps, and other heating equipment, hydraulics, ships, aircraft, etc. Understand what Escher Weiss was up to under the leadership of Eugene Schwab. Before and during World War II, the company was under the special patronage of Hitler due to its importance in the military-industrial complex of the Third Reich and was awarded the honorary title of Exemplary National Socialist Enterprise. Before I continue, there's another picture of Schwab shaking hands with Putin. It says Russian President Vladimir Putin shook hands with Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, during a plenary session at the 11th International Economic Forum that was in St. Petersburg on June 10th of 2007. So that's going back a ways, but it's important to see that every single one of these people is in on it. And Escher Weiss was, in modern parlance, Ravensburg's backbone enterprise. In a sense, Klaus Schwab's father ran not only the company, but also the city, and the city is famous for practicing eugenic principles to kill useless eaters. Wonder why we're having a food shortage? Wonder why all these things have burned down to the ground that were producing food, and the farmers are being told not to grow crops. So his father ran the company and also the city, and that city was famous for practicing eugenic principles to kill, quote, useless eaters. Ravensburg was a testing ground for technology developed by the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. Ravensburg, located next to the German-Swiss border, is also known for the fact that at the end of the war, it became a transit point through which gold plundered by the Nazis in different countries was sent to Switzerland. In the Hitlerite state, the Escher Weiss Company occupied a special place in the military-industrial complex. So that's the company that his father was running, Klaus Schwab. Since it was entrusted with the task of creating nuclear weapons, Hitler did not manage to create this weapon, but some developments in the Escher Weiss Company were made. They found application in the post-war period. After completing his higher technical education in Switzerland, Klaus worked under his parents' guidance for Escher Weiss. He was entrusted with the merger of the German company Escher Weiss and the Swiss company Sulzer AG. Klaus Schwab solved the problems associated with the illegal supply of components for the production of nuclear weapons by Escher Weiss to South Africa. This he did at least until 1971, when he established the World Economic Forum. So that's been going on since 1971, and it was then called the European Management Forum. The supply of materials and components for the production of nuclear weapons was banned by a UN decision. And there's no doubt that Klaus Schwab was involved in their smuggling of nuclear weapons components to South Africa, but he escaped punishment. Therefore, he's afraid to even mention his father's name. Well, I bet there's a whole lot more of the ties to Hitler than just the company and his father. As for the mother of Klaus Schwab, until recently there was no mention of her at all. Surprisingly, in 2021, Klaus Schwab publicly announced the names of his parents for the first time. Schwab's book, Capitalism of All Stakeholders, is dedicated to his parents. It says, "To my parents, Eugene Wilhelm Schwab and Erika Epprecht, who taught me firsthand the value of education, collaboration, and the stakeholder principle. Named not only the father, but also the mother, Erika Epprecht. But this is a shameless lie. Erika Epprecht is the stepmother of Klaus Schwab, and his blood mother is Emma Gisela Tekelius Schwab, nee Killian, the first wife of Eugene Wilhelm Schwab. She was 100% Jewish. Bingo. And now you know why they're going to accept King Charles III as the anointed one, as their king. because he's got the Jewish covenant in his flesh, and he's going to sit on Jacob's pillow stone during his coronation ceremony, and he's the top speaker under Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum. And now we know there's a connection there with the Jewishness, and of course King Charles III has this genealogical chart that claims to go back to Solomon and David. Soon after the birth of Klaus, the persecution of Jews in Germany intensified, and his mother was forced to leave the country. On December 9th, 1938, Emma Schwab immigrated to the United States under the name Gisela Schwab, leaving behind an infant named Klaus. Her future fate is unknown. Soon my father married again. His wife was the woman whose name is indicated in the dedication of Klaus Schwab's on his book, Erika Epprecht, Klaus's stepmother. As the author of the publication Klaus Schwab and the Fourth Reich Notes, was a strong Aryan acceptable to the Nazis. At the time, no records of a divorce from Emma or a remarriage with Erika were found. Perhaps Erika Epprecht was not quite the legitimate stepmother of the future president of the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab brought up in early childhood in the spirit of National Socialism in every way possible, hid who his mother really was. Even in his youth, our Schwab entered the role of 100% Aryan. The Aryan spirit tried to convey to him his father. Probably after the flight of Emma, Eugene Schwab breathed a sigh of relief. She would have interfered with his career in the Third Reich. Klaus Schwab has an older brother who was born into the family of Eugene and Emma Schwab. In 1927, his name's Hans Schwab. He, unlike Klaus, always considered himself a full-fledged Jew. Jewry is determined not by his father, but by his mother. And of course, his mother was 100% Jewish. He did not renounce his mother, but he also maintained relationships with his father. In Brazil, a company was created which became part of Escher Weiss, and Hans took over the management. Once Klaus Schwab let slip that Eugene and Erika Epprecht visited Brazil in 1960, the author of the article Klaus Schwab and the Fourth Reich writes, Klaus Schwab almost never smiles, and we now know why. He knows that he's a swindler, a circus barker who grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth, whose heart has nothing to share with the world. Such a person is a convenient figure for those who conceived the Great Reset. No, he's not from the Rothschilds, but he's undoubtedly the agent and protege of the Rothschilds. I wrote about this in my book, Reading Schwab, Inclusive Capitalism and the Great Reset, an Open Conspiracy Against Humanity. And this was written in Moscow in 2021. Nitsnevmir. All right, so you see how the Sanhedrin has been meeting with the Messiah behind the scenes, and they've been saying, they've been talking to him, and coincidentally, I did find an article after I said this just yesterday that said that their intention is, to set up a king on a throne to reestablish the monarchy at the time of the Third Temple being built, and having one man be the ruler, and to do away with the election things of all of the Netanyahus and Gantz and all of those people. So there you go, 100% Jewish, and he is perpetrating this evil on the world. And now you know why I said, when the Lord revealed to me that Jerusalem and the sons and daughters of Zion, God said that they played the harlot against him, and also they had done evil in his sight. And now, this shows you why in the book of Revelation, this monarchy that's going to be reestablished under an earthly king that's got the Jewish circumcision in his flesh and has a Jewish genealogical chart established, why they are going to put him in charge. And it becomes very, very clear that they're orchestrating all of this to set up the whole Sanhedrin as the world court in Jerusalem, to elevate Israel. But this is a corrupt system, and they are Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. Jerusalem is the mother of us all, because this is where Adam and Eve were created. And this is a beast that's coming up out of the bottomless pit, because this is where Eden was, and there was corruption, and these people have turned away from God and everything, of course. And we know that Yuval Noah Harari is an atheist, among other things that he is, but he's not for God. And it just becomes very clear that this whole thing is being set up by people that are in, I hate to say that, but his mother was 100% Jewish, and he's doing what is evil in God's eyes. And now maybe this helps you to understand why they are Mystery Babylon of the book of Revelation, that they are the first beast. Now you're wondering how the one world government under one king and leader is going to come about with the one world religion, and here's your answer. This is how it's going to come together with that. And this was written a long time ago, February 8th of 2002. So that's a long, long time ago. But this is from jewisheyes.com. And it says, religion has role at economic forum. And I only want to read this because this will help put some of the pieces in place. This was in New York back in 2002. Among the who's who of business and political leaders roaming the halls of that year's World Economic Forum was a large contingent of rabbis, priests, and imams. The new members of one of the world's most elite clubs demonstrate that, especially since September 11th, religion increasingly is seen an integral force in economic and political relations. What September 11th demonstrated more forcefully than ever is that religion can be terribly abused for violent purposes that can affect us all, said Rabbi David Rosen, director of interreligious affairs for the American Jewish Committee and a participant at the Economic Forum. He's somebody who's named to remember because he's in a lot of the articles, Rabbi David Rosen. You have to strengthen the moderates who can make religion a constructive force rather than a destructive one, Rosen said. You can't ignore religion in terms of political and social processes. In fact, the founder and president of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, was having breakfast with Rabbi Arthur Schneier at his Park East Synagogue in New York when the two jets struck the World Trade Center, Schneier said. Kind of a coincidence, don't you think? And I might add that the World Trade Center buildings were owned by a man named Silverstein, and he was Jewish, and they happened to be there in New York. You can't tell me this doesn't all come together. Schneier, who heads the Appeal of Conscience Foundation, a coalition of business and religious leaders in New York, had intended to discuss increasing the participation of religious leaders at the Economic Forum. So there you go. They're going to bring the one world government together with the one world religion right there at the WEF, the World Economic Forum. After the attack, the notion seemed even more urgent. with Schneier's assistant, Schwab, decided to commemorate the world disaster by moving his forum, traditionally held in the Swiss ski resort of Davos, to New York City, Schneier said, and he doubled the number of religious leaders to 40, including 8 Jews. While Western nations have distanced religion from public life in recent decades, the forum's new line is to embrace religion, understand its traditions, and glean its wisdom. This year's 5-day forum, that was in 2002, which ended February 4th, included interfaith dialogue groups. Ta-da! And for the first time spread the religious leaders out on panels throughout the forum, such as migration and citizenship, the Middle East conflict, and cultural diversity. So there you go. They're including the Middle East conflict, and a big huge chunk of that's going to be the building of the third temple and allowing the Jews to build that on Holy Mount Moriah on the Temple Mount. Great Britain's chief rabbi, Jonathan Sacks, by the way, super duper buddies with King Charles III until he passed away fairly recently. He said that the key is to give religion influence but not allow it to hold power. So long as we keep that distinction clear, we will not endanger our liberties, he said. At the time, the Economic Forum came on the heels of then Pope John Paul II's Interfaith meeting in Assisi, Italy, a summit of religious leaders in Alexandria, Egypt, and gathering of religious leaders at the United Nations. So you see how they're going to put this one world government with the king at the head that has the Jewish lineage of King David and Solomon and will be the anointed one, the Messiah. And then they're going to put the 70 nations as a ruling body in Jerusalem and the Sanhedrin as the world court, and they will set their king up there on God's holy hill. So this is bringing in the religious groups of all different faiths. And if the United Nations is changed to a 70 nations delegation in Jerusalem as a world court, convenes right there in Jerusalem with them, with one man ruling, then you can see how the recent gathering of religious leaders at the United Nations would now be the one world religion right there in Jerusalem, bringing all the religions together with this global government. Sachs recalled that Britain's Prime Minister Tony Blair called the country's religious leaders to 10 Downing Street after September 11th to help calm the atmosphere in Britain. Rabbis at the forum said religious leaders sometimes can build trust where politicians can't. Rabbi Sachs, who developed friendships with Muslim leaders in England, described a common language among people of faith. Now, Rabbi Sachs passed away fairly recently, like I said, and King Charles III spoke at his memorial because he was very close to him. Skeptics, however, note that while Muslim participants at interfaith dialogues indeed criticize violence, they often praise it in ways that legitimize Arab attacks on Israel. In addition, some say the Economic Forum's decision to add a religious element to the conference is not entirely altruistic. And altruistic means showing a disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others, unselfish. So now let's skip to January 2019, Davos, Switzerland, World Economic Forum. And this was an event summary from iafsc.org. The Interfaith Alliance for Safer Communities organized an event on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum at Davos. The event comprised of a panel discussion titled Mobilizing Faith Communities in Safeguarding Communities and Globalization, comprising of faith leaders and experts from across the world. The World Economic Forum was also the first stop of the Child Dignity Traveling Exposition. The session had participants discuss the effective utilization of interfaith dialogue to equip faith leaders with the knowledge and capabilities required to deliver sustainable and tangible results on the ground. The panel also talked about the relevance of faith to human progress and community prosperity, converting interfaith dialogue into action, and the experiences of faith-based organizations in partnering with government agencies, private sector entities, and social society. So they plan on using the interfaith religion, the one world religion, as a means to control humanity and the population under the leadership of their one world government, with the Antichrist at the helm. His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel spoke of the growing relevance of faith to human and community progress and the need for faith leaders to be approachable to members of their communities, along with the role that faith leaders can play in safeguarding their communities. Annie Choying talked about the power of love and how faith leaders have to set an example to their communities through their behavior. She also talked about the consultations with 270 plus faith leaders from across 30 countries in the run-up to the Abu Dhabi event, concluding with the need to convert interfaith dialogue into interfaith action. Professor Caffo concluded the discussion talking about the importance of partnerships and collaborations between faith-based organizations, governments, private sector, and civil society, and the importance of combining the two knowledge systems of science and religion to make a difference. The event was attended by representatives of multiple faiths and international organizations. Prominent attendees included Rabbi Pinchas Goldschmidt, Chief Rabbi of Moscow and President of the Conference of European Rabbis, and Imam Hassan Chalgoumi, President of the Conference of Imams of France. And now there could be no doubt in your mind that Jerusalem and her people, the sons and daughters of Zion, that were called the harlot by God in the book of Lamentations, not my opinion, which people keep saying, it's America. And it's not America, it's Jerusalem. And this is where things are going to end, and this is where Daniel's prophecy is unfolding before our eyes. And these are Jewish people that are involved in all of these things, trying to create a great reset for humanity. And why? Because they want to elevate themselves and set up their earthly king. But those of us who've already accepted the King of Kings and know who he is and trust him and partake of his covenant, we will go to be with him in his kingdom, and they will have their kingdom and their king and their anointed one fairly soon. And you can't tell me that King Charles III's coronation being June 3rd, 2023 isn't going to be sometime around when the third temple is going to be allowed to start being built on the Temple Mount. Because this is what the rabbi's intention is to restore the monarchy and the third temple. And so they're going to set a king that they think is, their idea of a Messiah is just a man, not divine, not a God of miracles in human flesh, but a man who does political things all over the world that brings about a certain peace that they're going to believe and trust in. And so, what does God say? Come out of her, my people. He's telling his own people, Israel, come out of her unless you be partakers of her plagues. And it's a warning. It's a warning sign. And don't take the royal cipher mark of the king that they appoint. And all I can say is I hope that this helped piece together how all of these things are connected and interwoven in how they're setting up for the final end time scenario. And obviously, our King is coming, and we don't know exactly when, but we're watching and waiting. Maybe it will be during the Feast of Tabernacles, and maybe on the 8th day, Shemini Atzeret. I talked about that probably a year ago, and I have a video about it if you want to go look for it. I have no idea how far back it is, but I know it was probably, I would say it's probably a year and a half ago, maybe. Anyway, we're just seeing this all before our eyes, and I hope this helps to solidify why when I said that, Revelation 13 and Revelation 18 have to do with Jerusalem, Israel, and God's people. And it's Israel that has to fulfill the time of Jacob's trouble, because that is their time frame that's left from Daniel's prophecy. It's not America. And as I said, and people just do not listen, there are elements of Babylon that were brought into every nation when Israel was dispersed. And they had been in Babylon. All the nations were deceived by her sorceries. And that cannot be talking about America. It's talking about when she deceived the nations, it's talking about Israel. And the world wondered after the beast because they didn't have a monarchy for all of these centuries. The monarchy, the crown was taken from their head, and they had the deadly head wound by a sword and yet lived. And now in the last days, they are going to set a king on God's holy hill, on holy Mount Moriah. And they're going to call him their anointed one. Meanwhile, the real one is up in heaven watching, and he's going to come again. And when he comes, he's going to come and bring judgment. So I don't think you want to be caught in the trap that they are setting for the Jewish people. And keep in mind that during the lockdowns, they had some of the most severe situation there that the Jewish people were having to deal with. And remember, it was Jeroboam and Rehoboam that didn't care one darn thing about the people that were their subjects. They were pulling people away from God. They were not righteous. And just as today, their leaders are not righteous. So, as Christians, we tend to think the holy city, oh wow, all these people are believers over there, but they're not. They are not. And they're orchestrating this against humanity to elevate themselves. And instead of elevating King Jesus, Yeshua, they say horrible things about him, not only in their Talmud, but, you have the Jews for Judaism that hate missionaries, and they don't want to hear anything, and they try to downplay any of the truth of the gospel account. Judgment is coming upon these particular people I've been talking about that are setting up this campaign against humanity to elevate themselves and to rid the world of a bunch of the population through starvation and plagues and things that they're bringing about. But God is going to send two witnesses, Elijah and Moses, and they are going to show who's boss. And you don't want to be on their bad side. This is why God said, come out of her, my people, because it's Israel, it's Jerusalem, it's, this monarchy that they're going to appoint somebody. And you can see now how it all fits together with King Charles III and being a leader at Davos at the World Economic Forum and having all the money in the world to spend on putting their plan in place. And they're going to use church leaders and religious leaders in churches to help manipulate the people into complying. And he's already working to try to get the farmers to comply to zero carbon footprint. And these people are really turning themselves into gods, so to speak, trying to control the world and all of its people, which is not their job. So, the judgment is coming. And if you are a Jewish person, God bless you. I hope you find that Yeshua died for your sins to take you back into God's garden as it was in the beginning, because he loves you and he loves anyone that comes to him. He will in no wise cast out. So there's not a whole lot of time left to get these messages out. And if you're receiving this message, count yourself to be very fortunate, because I don't have to be doing videos saying these things, but I am taking my time, efforts, and energy to present this to everyone as a warning. So anyway, now you can see how it's all going to come together. One world religion with a king at the helm, with the 70 nations rising up in Jerusalem, where Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots, is going to bring forth all the corruption. She's become the habitat for every foul and unclean bird and snare for all. So this is something I felt was very urgent and important to tell you, and putting the pieces all together of how it's all creating this end time scenario. And now you see that Klaus Schwab, his mother was 100% Jewish, and his father was making components for Hitler, and he's tried to hide it. And now you know why Jesus said that God will judge his people. Until the next video, I hope that this enlightened you a little bit more, and I'll talk to you the next time. Good night.